And at 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room, and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind, and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9, animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. And at 8, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like, NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me. And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place. Fanny. Viruses that are supposed to be sentient code, I can get with that concept because in the FNAF verse, that's logical. Whatever. What I cannot get behind, however, is how a computer virus could end up taking control over an organic being, and more importantly, a human. Like, yeah, we need electricity for our brains and body to function, but that doesn't mean in the morning when I'm waking up, I have my morning coffee and it boots up the JavaScript in my head. No, that's not how we function as humans. Also, get it? JavaScript? Coffee?
I mean, that's like the logo of the... Okay. There should be no way for a computer virus, sentient or not, to be able to invade my brain, take control over me, and even temporarily, and cause me to kill. That's absolutely impossible, even for FNAF. It's actually ridiculous. Vanny should be an impossible villain as she's being presented. Does this mean that it's entirely impossible? No, she could very well just be a robot, just a very realistic one, or she could not be being controlled by William. However, the Princess Quest endings seem to heavily imply that she is being controlled by William. So, if she really is a human Vanessa, she's impossible. Unless she's meant to be a rebuilt Elizabeth robot like Charlie from the FNAF novel trilogy, or seemingly crying child in Gregory in this game as well. Who knows? I doubt even Scott knows at this point. And for business deals.
The people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2. Getting close to the end in at number 3, fire. Alright, so, during the true ending, otherwise known as the Afton ending or the Burn Trap ending or whatever you wanna call it ending, we have to fend off Burn Trap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire using what I'm guessing are the mechanisms that Henry used to set fire to the FNAF 6 location. However, I mean, it's pretty convenient how we fall into the room that we need to in this case, with monitors set up connected to the cameras in the various rooms that Burn Trap enters exclusively, with buttons that light the fires in those various rooms that correspond with the monitor, despite it being far more convenient for Henry to light everything at the same time with one button. Think about it, okay? How are these working still? It's clearly been a while, okay? Based on some comments, apparently the Pizzaplex has been open for at least 4 years, which I don't know if it's accurate, but if it is, these cameras and old computers are still working 4 years after being set on fire. That was enough to ruin the building. Not to mention a sinkhole that had to open up underneath it since we have to travel down an elevator to get there. And like, how is it working after all of that? And if you say that it was Vanny, why make sure the fire systems are still working and then set them to be on separate buttons? Okay, plus now these computer monitors are literal dinosaurs. How did they work before the fire, let alone after? Yeah. Penultimately in a number 2, investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood. So much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that shit out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me. And honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Yes, they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was cold. Finally, in at number 1, doors. You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud.
Yes. And at 10, hate. Now, while in a way this whole list is kind of hate, depending on how you look at it, here I'm more so talking about the hate that people get for talking about these things online. Now, I feel like I've done a good job making it known that this isn't my favorite thing to do, and therefore I've avoided a lot of things, like being called a furry and whatnot, and that's because Chica doesn't have fur, she has feathers, or just plastic. But the real thing I don't get, okay, is the hate that people get in particular for talking about theories. Like, why are you getting mad at someone for suggesting something that they think could be plausible based on conclusions they've gathered through evidence presented in the series? Like, the hate that I was getting for suggesting that Crying Child was actually a robot, but also his older brother, kind of insane. Like, I know that it wasn't likely, but still, Jesus. My DMs at the time were freaking horrifying. The hate that Matt Pat has been getting on Twitter recently for saying that Gregory is a robot Crying Child, absolutely insane. Because most people are saying that he can't be a robot because he's just comparing two white kids, and that the robot is too young to be Gregory, because he would have been made earlier in the timeline. Hello, he's a robot. He doesn't age. And yes, they may both just be white kids, but like, one we've only seen in 8-bit. So design choices like 2 stripes on the shirt could actually contribute, because it's the only thing we know about this kid. Plus, he's not saying that it's 100% fact. Literally at the end of the video, he says that it's just a theory. Like, I don't get the hate that theorists get. I just don't. And at 9, rooftop ending. The rooftop ending, in my opinion, is one of the most confusing endings in the game, because simply put, it throws the most wrenches into this game. Like, Freddy is more than willing to burn down the Pizzaplex, almost seemingly enjoying it, and then another version of Vanessa is standing on the roof after we reveal that Vanny on the ground was Vanessa. Because this one thing can help us see if Vanny is really a robot or if she's just a ghost looking down on everything. And I think that the identity of one of the main antagonists is kind of important in the series. Like, are we fighting off another robot, or is it just a person somehow controlled by a computer virus? This ending is one of the most frustratingly confusing and just outright annoying parts of the game. Well, I mean, like, the post game is actually considered assault, but this rooftop ending really isn't getting the attention it deserves, because I feel like there's something more here, and I'm guessing other theorists and other people are just like, they've come to the conclusion that it's her spirit and then like moved on, but I think that Scott left us that ending for a reason. It just doesn't make sense. And at 8, Princess Quest. Princess Quest's ending does in reality make sense, and I understand why we need to play through all the Princess Quest arcade cabinets in order to save Vanny's mind, since Princess Quest was in the mobile port for FNAF VR, and at the end we unlock the same door we got sealed behind in FNAF VR. But the main issue I have with how this doesn't make sense is the fact that how is this possible? How are we able to be trapped inside a mobile game, or at least part of our mind is trapped inside a mobile game, but then can also be ported into arcade cabinets without us escaping while they're actually moving our consciousness? And why is it broken up into 3 machines? Like, are you telling me that there was no way to get a mobile game into a single arcade cabinet because it was too big? Like, if a full arcade cabinet can play Mortal Kombat, I think it can handle a mobile game, or even like just a section of a mobile game if we're being real. It could have been because they made the game bigger, or because they wanted to make it more difficult to unlock Vanny, but the easiest thing to do for that would just be to like bring the cabinet down to where Afton is hiding and store it in there, or fill it with concrete and bury it. Considering how we are able to actually unlock our brain like we're the Sorcerer Supreme, I think I'm in the right on this one. You just gotta hide it better, dude. And it's 7, wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, what? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing. Because, like,
WTF.
In at 6, post-game. This one isn't about making sense in the real world, really. Like, if this was real life, that shouldn't work, kind of thing. But the idea that after 6 a.m., when you choose to stay in the Pizzaplex, you are no longer able to save your game doesn't make sense from either a real world or an in-game perspective. These save spots are designed to look like reservation kiosks, where you can save your spot in line for various attractions and such, which is honestly a good idea, especially with little children running around and the parents having to be like, no, we need to wait in this line, but now we don't have to, and you can run around to your heart's content. But the idea that those kiosks are running all night from 11:30 to 5:50 a.m. but turn off when the place actually opens for staff is absolutely absurd. Like, if anything, you would want these things to be on at that point. Plus, it's a horrible gameplay mechanic. Like, why are you now making it impossible for me to save my progress when I can now see all the little gifts and lore bags hidden around the map? And it's still in a Freddy who loses power really quick. And that is a mechanic that I really hope they fix in an update, because it's kind of absolutely absurd and should be classified as actual assault. Well, I mean, technically you can save your game one more time if you go down the elevator for the final boss fight, but then at that point you really can't collect everything if you haven't done it yet. You'll have to restart the entire game to do so. Halfway through into number 5.
Halfway through into number 5, not a snitch. Okay, I don't know how Gregory survived security breach in general, alright? There were plenty of times that this kid could have got. Particularly though when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside parts of service. You're telling me that Moondrop, the daycare attendant, the guy who has been chasing us every hour on the hour, told Vanessa that Freddy was in the parts and service room, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station right next to it? He knew we were there. He waved at us while taking Freddy away. And then Vanessa talks to Freddy as if she doesn't know that we're listening in. It's almost like they're putting on a show. Like, sure, the daycare attendant isn't able to get us while we're in a recharge station, but we clearly aren't visible to him. He waved. So why wouldn't he also inform Vanessa about a kid in the recharge station while also saying, oh yeah, and I got Freddy? Okay, and if he did, why not bring that up when talking to Freddy instead of just asking him if he's helping us? Okay, it doesn't make sense. Daycare attendant not ratting on us is definitely a lucky moment, okay? I guess maybe he knows that snitches get stitches and that Gregory will tear him limb from limb with a smile on his face if he did, so maybe that's how it works. And at 3, business expansion. When a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like, if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. What the, like, how the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game to opening an entire mall-sized Pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in? What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened and to see if their pizza is recycled.
Ultimately, in number 2, Glitch Trap. I've mentioned this in 2 recent videos, however I wanted to again go over how Glitch Trap at this point should certainly be impossible. With everything we've seen in these games, possession and anything having to do with such mostly comes from a dead person or someone who dies after pouring their agony into something. So how could Glitch Trap be a thing if William still has his body inside the Springtrap suit? Unless Help Wanted takes place after Security Breach, which is also impossible because the ending of Help Wanted is what causes us to be able to free Vanny in the good and the best endings. Because, you know, Princess Quest was ported into from mobile. Okay, look, you know what? After Security Breach, Glitch Trap, impossible, okay? It can't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. It doesn't make sense.
In at 10, paint cans. After starting the game and getting to the free roam section of Security Breach where you have the tutorial for distracting animatronics, I just want to mention how goddamn lucky that is, okay? Like, one of the animatronics that you're going to need to avoid, no matter how damn fine she is, you need to avoid her, is literally eating garbage right in your way. But somehow, there's also a stack of paint cans randomly on a random cart in the middle of the hall in front of you. The cart is also, for some reason, blocking the hall, which I'm sure multiple employees love having to take the long way around, but it's fine that it's blocking the way because you can knock over these convenient and empty paint cans so that Chica will come and investigate it. I'd say her taking the way that she does is also lucky. However, this is like one of the only times where pathing makes sense since she's right next to the door that she ends up using, and I think that any other person in this situation would have done the same thing. However, one thing that I don't understand is in 9, Inconvenient exit. During the so-called interrogation and torture scene in Parts and Service, from what I've been seeing YouTube videos titled online, Vanessa is questioning Freddy about Gregory and accusing him of helping Gregory, which I mean is true, but she shouldn't have to actually accuse him of that, more on that later. But after telling him that she's gonna leave him down there until his casing can be put on a new endo, which doesn't really make sense if the coating is the issue and not the endoskeleton, like, still, why would you leave to go to Rockstar Row through Roxy's lift when you could easily have just turned around to come our way and headed into the main atrium? That's where Gregory is for the majority of the game. That's where all the animatronics have been spotting him, and it would make more sense to go there than to Rockstar Row, where maybe he was seen twice at this point. I don't know, it seems weird to me, but the reason that this is lucky is because had she chosen to go the more logical route, which would have been towards us, she would have walked through the doors we were hiding behind, and it's not like we have much room to hide around them, okay? The walls on either side of this door are made of glass. She would see us run into the charging station or wherever else we went. So yeah, her choosing to exit in the most inconvenient way to her actually ends up helping us out. And at 8, Freddy. Just everything that Gregory does with Freddy seems to work out eventually, even if not at first. Look at what he does before the doors actually close the first time. He sends us to get a pass in order to free him from the green room, and then everything seems to be going well. But then for some random reason, without ever mentioning this before, he tells us that he senses that we are broken and that he needs to bring us to a medical tent so that he can fix us up. Whether this was meant to be a nod to Crying Child or not in this case doesn't matter. Point is here that it didn't do anything, okay? We get a run-in with Vanessa that later turns into a TikTok meme, but other than that, we stay the same, okay? We don't get healed, we don't get a band-aid because we could have had the one that's on his character from the start, and we get in that booth, instantly turn around to watch the Vanessa and Freddy scene, and then after that, we leave instantly, and Freddy never mentions how we're still broken. And being broken, in this case, never seems to come up again or cause us any issues. Especially since now, with that little pit stop, even if you go full steam ahead, you can't make it out of the front doors in time. That one little interaction is the 30 seconds that we needed in order to escape out the front doors, but thanks to Freddy, we didn't make it. But he still doesn't abandon us. He just tries to help. I mean, I don't know, it's off, okay? And if Freddy is evil, him not revealing it there and then is definitely lucky as hell. And at 7, time. The time scaling in this series has always been questionable. However, the real issue I have with this is just how inconsistent it is in this game. Like, I understand needing it to progress the story, and that's fine. But the entire time I've played this game, I've played 8 hours of it, and somehow it wasn't 6 AM yet, and it kind of annoyed me. Not because, like, it's not the same as the real world time, that remains true for basically any game, but when we're in, like, the last 10 minutes before it hits 6 AM in game, the home stretch before the daycare attendant gets you, and when you're able to actually escape, you have, like, not even 5 minutes for something that's supposed to be 10. Like, at least give me the 10 minutes so I can figure out where the hell I'm supposed to fucking go. This place is so fucking huge and confusing to begin with, and now you're introducing a time limit that isn't even in line with what you're saying it's supposed to be when I've spent 8 hours in this game and it hasn't even been 6. I also wish that they had gone with my idea of having an ending where you just waited until 6. Like, I wish that was an option, because seemingly in this game, time stops if you're not progressing the story. So if I was just chilling in a corner, hiding from the animatronics, which is, let's be honest, realistic, so honestly, I could have just been playing for 6 hours instead. I could have saved myself 2 hours of torturing myself with FNAF. And at 6, disassemble. In the Fazbear Blast ending, the one where, you know, you push the button instead of playing Princess Quest 3, Gregory actually ends up ordering the robots to disassemble Vanny. Gregory being willing to kill Vanny here is pretty messed up. However, it's lucky that these staff bots even understood that command. Okay, Vanny is a human, not something that's typically seen as capable of disassembly, okay? When a serial killer hacks up a body, okay, the police don't say that the victim was disassembled, they say they were dismembered, okay? This guy kills kills Vanny, and then only gets emotional when he has to go talk to a destroyed Freddy. Okay, like, dude, okay, Vanny is literally bleeding out next to you. We saw what happened to Freddy. Okay, that was the disassembly. So, yeah, couldn't you just have said, like, stop or restrain Vanny? Particularly stop, okay? You didn't have to say freaking disassemble. I get that she said that about Freddy and it was fresh in your mind, but dude, okay? You're not panicking about literally anything else. And if the robots hadn't understood that command because, you know, humans aren't disassembled, then it would have caused you a hell of a lot of pain. It worked on Freddy because robots can be disassembled because they get assembled in the first place. But now I am definitely going to start calling pregnancy assembling a human now, so that's fun. Thanks for that. Halfway through into number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus. In it for destruction. Speaking of tearing animatronics limb from limb, isn't it convenient that there is a way to break every other animatronic that isn't Freddy, and then that leaves the animatronic broken in the right way to remove whatever aspect that you actually needed to upgrade Freddy? Hell yeah it is. It's so lucky that there is somehow a way to break each of the animatronics in the perfect amount for the animatronics as well, okay? And it works the first time. And even with Chica, okay, we push her into a trash compactor and somehow don't get crushed ourselves despite her grabbing onto our leg, okay? We only get pulled into another area that we can still get back to the Pizzaplex through instead of being pulled into the trash compactor and crushed. So yeah, needless to say that looking at it logically, it's extremely lucky that there is a way to destroy each of the evil animatronics in a way that allows us to access their specific upgrades. Even though we didn't need to crush the animatronics and instead it could have just chilled in Freddy's green room until 6 AM when the doors opened. So yeah, lucky us. Getting close to the end into number 3, not bankrupt. How is Fazbear Entertainment not bankrupt at this point? Like, to me, this is probably the most unbelievable thing in this entire series. But that's not really what this list is about. With literally everything that has been going on with these restaurants for like 40 years, why haven't they caught on and know that these restaurants aren't safe? And by they and them, I mean like the general public. Like especially when kids go missing from the Pizzaplex. We have at least 9 kids in the worst endings final newspaper. That alone should be enough to deter people from going in. But as we see in the starting concert to the game where Freddy glitches out, we know that it was absolutely packed with people. And clearly, that doesn't help the kids since they're still being taken by Vanny. So, what the hell are you thinking? Not only have they not gone bankrupt, but they've also been able to expand into a giant mall-sized complex, for crying out loud. How could they do that when basically everyone knows what William did at this point? And ultimately, in number 2, Boy Genius. The absolute mountain of knowledge that this kid has exceeds my own, okay? This kid is the size of a 4-year-old. He can fit inside Freddy, baby strollers, like popcorn kind of vending cart things that you can find around the Pizzaplex, and various other small areas. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone and has to get one of his, like, the instructor bot things. But he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor. He's strong enough to restart generators. And he's also capable of driving a car, as well as identifying the car battery, connecting jumper cables on a car battery properly, and then using those to fix Freddy's recharging issue, okay? How does this make any sense? And how do they solve that issue in literally any other ending, okay? Because Freddy is still going to need to recharge every hour, supposedly, or at least he says that he does. I don't really believe that that's a story for another day. But like, how does this happen? Okay, how do they solve that issue? This kid knows more words than I do, but is somehow the size of a 4-year-old. Maybe even smaller, okay? It makes absolutely no sense. And this kid's weird superpower is what makes this game so confusing. It really only makes sense if he's a robot that's supposed to mimic a toddler who's been operational for decades decades and has been learning the whole time, okay? Or that Security Breach is really just a cleverly skinned Jimmy Neutron fan game, okay? Which one is more likely here? And finally, in at number 1, Free Roam Freddy. We've talked a lot about the parts and service section, okay? Because Gregory just seems to have gotten extremely lucky at multiple points in this chapter of the game, one after the other. However, the luckiest, I think, comes from after Vanessa leaves Freddy in parts and service. She says that it's so that his casing can be put on a new endo after either corporate gives the green light or they have someone on the clock who can actually just remove it and put it on someone else. But she doesn't seem to be suspicious that he's walking around Rockstar Row literally within like maybe 3 minutes if you've played the section before and don't mess up the memory game, okay? Like, who would have repaired him if not Gregory? There is literally no other living human in the Pizzaplex at this point, and the whole containment cylinder thing is to protect human beings. There are no staff bots in parts and service, and the reason you had to leave him there was because nobody else is working since it's after midnight. Why would Vanessa be so chill about Freddy walking around after that? I mean, like, she literally left him with his head removed, and if she assumed that somehow he did it himself, why wouldn't she then confine him to his room if he's that suspicious? Especially after just accusing him of helping to protect Gregory. It was something that confused me so much in my first playthrough, so I figured that Vanessa would pull us out of Freddy if we got too close. But I walked up to her to test it, and nothing. It would have been easy to make just a little modification to her code for this part of the game and make her actually be like, why are you here? Rip out Freddy. Or rip out Gregory, not Freddy. But like, come on, you could have made Vanessa a little bit more dangerous at this point, but no, okay? Gregory venting certainly isn't the only thing that's sus about this game. Let me just say that. In at 9, Homeless. The fact that Gregory also appears to be homeless is an entirely other thing. Like normally, if a child is homeless or an orphan, he'd be taken to an orphanage or to family to stay with. Yet somehow, this child has been able to avoid every form of law enforcement that's noticed him, or just avoided detection altogether, and that seems fairly insane to me. However, these are also the police that couldn't find the original 5 missing children's bodies after the animatronics were literally leaking blood, but that's aside the point. You'd think that this kid, after being locked in a Pizzaplex overnight, would be willing to go to an orphanage to make sure that he was safe, because, you know, a psychopathic killer bunny was after you for 6 hours. But no. My question is, why did Gregory just go and why did he hide in the Pizzaplex if he was really homeless? Like, I'm sure that Freddy could have kept him in his green room and just let him sleep. Or hell, let Gregory sleep in his stomach while Freddy made sure that he was getting to the recharge stations every hour like he needed to normally. It just seems like it could have been avoided. And it should have been avoided. And at 8, Height. Now, Gregory's height compared to his age has always been something that's bothered me. So, to really calculate how tall Gregory is, I did a good old pixel measurement off the Funko statue of Gregory and Freddy. Now, assuming that Glamrock Freddy's height is the same as Rockstar Freddy, which ends up being around 6.1 feet, which is, let's be honest, going to give Gregory the best chance here. That means that Freddy's 570 pixels in this instance, for how I was doing it, ends up being 6.1 feet. The opening that Gregory hides in, when being generous with my counting, was 118 pixels tall, averaging out to around 8.3 pixels per inch. 118 pixels, which keep in mind was generous, ends up equaling to about 14.21 inches or 1.18 feet. Going on various forums about children's car seats, I learned that the torso length of kids, while greatly varying, does end up being larger than 14.21 inches on average. Even a 4-year-old ended up having a torso of 15 inches. So Gregory ends up fitting his entire torso into the cavity with room to spare. I double checked the measurements because that just seemed off to me, and it still worked out properly. So Gregory's torso is smaller than that of a 4-year-old. So what the is going on here? And at 6, Therapy. Gregory might have actually been going to therapy, but we're not certain if this was actually the case. This is possible though thanks to the 16 retro CDs that can be found towards the end of the game. That can be played with a CD player in the hidden sister location room. The retro CDs require Roxanne's eye upgrade on Glamrock Freddy. Out of all 16 tapes though, half of them are for a patient labeled with the numbers 4-6. The other 8 are for Vanessa, however these are marked with the number 7-1. Patient 46 is very odd. never responding with words and never even being named. Some assume that this could be Vanny, however if that were the case, they wouldn't have another designation for her since they just think it's Vanessa. The issue also arises that they're being talked to as if they were a child, which would indicate Gregory. But only people associated with the company end up being evaluated by the shrink. So how could Gregory be associated with this company but not have a guest profile and be wiped from the hard drive? Client 46 also had their last 3 therapists disappear, with one of them turning up dead, and they don't really seem to mind, which lines up with Gregory being willing to kill Vanny in the phaser blast ending. So, maybe it is him. Halfway through into number 5, worst Easter ever. Okay, from an in-universe perspective, in Security Breach, Vanny brought back seemingly this Earth's most prolific killer. But from a story perspective, it also kinda comes out of nowhere and feels forced. And in a game sense, he also just looks terrifying and then sends all the broken animatronics after us. And lore-wise, Afton's back again. However, he's also not entirely back this time, considering how this version actually seems to finally be dead, however only functional because maybe the coded version of Afton's consciousness is inside the animatronic. No matter what, this shouldn't have worked. He shouldn't have been able to have a sentient code form possessed Vanny, but then also be able to be present in his actual body. Like what? Unless this entire time after getting spring-locked, his consciousness was instantly turned into a code, and that was then controlling the springtrap suit. And in a way, I guess, would make sense. I mean, it would make a lot more sense than him being possessed by the spirit of his son. But from everything we've gotten, including Ultimate Custom Night and the man in room 1280, he was possessed, but to be kept alive so he could keep suffering, okay? Meaning that none of this should have worked, but it did. In at 4, Vanessa. Like I just mentioned, his relationship with Vanessa also seemingly makes no sense. We're willing to kill her in one ending, she kills us in another, but if we free her from William's control, she ends up taking us out for ice cream, and we sit on a hill with Glamrock Freddy's head, no big deal. Like this lady just spent 6 hours trying to kill you, bro. You think that it would be a little more difficult to just go out and chill with her, even if she did offer you ice cream. Like, would you get into her unmarked van if she offered you ice cream? I doubt it. So like, why do you think this is a good idea? It seems like they're related, or at least know each other somehow, but no connection prior to this has ever been established. So like, what the absolute living hell? And Gregory isn't mentioned in Vanessa's therapy sessions and vice versa. Vanessa isn't mentioned to Gregory in those sessions, if those sessions are for Gregory at least. But even if they are Gregory's, who made him associated with the company? It could have been Vanessa, but wouldn't they have ended up mentioning her odd behavior or asked Vanessa about her younger brother or foster brother or whatever the hell he is? Exactly. This is King 100% certified weird. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Moondrop. While there are plenty of times that Gregory could have been made in this game, particularly when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside of parts and service, that should have been it. You're trying to tell me that the daycare attendant, the dude who really wants to get us, told Vanessa that Freddy was in parts and service in the room or whatever, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station that was right next to it? I mean, like, he knew we were there. He waved at us while taking Freddy away. What? Then, when she talks to Freddy, she's talking as if she doesn't know that we're listening in. It's almost like they put on a show. Like, sure, the daycare attendant isn't able to get us if we're in a recharge station, but we clearly aren't invisible to him because he literally waves at us. So why wouldn't he inform Vanessa about this while mentioning Freddy? And if he did, why not bring that up when talking to Freddy instead of just asking him if he's helping us? It doesn't make sense. The daycare attendant not ratting on us is definitely a lucky moment, but I guess, I don't know, maybe he knows that snitches get stitches, or maybe since Moondrop is such a damn creeper, he wanted to save us for himself. Oh god. Penultimately, in at number 2, can drive. Gregory being able to drive the Fazbear van in the van ending is probably one of the biggest WTF moments in this entire game for me. Like, this kid is able to hide in baby strollers and can fit his torso into a 14-inch hole, but is also able to press the pedals on a van, not even a car, but like an actual van. How the living hell is that possible? I guess maybe perhaps he put like a brick on the gas pedal, but that seems like it would be an even worse idea and not very effective, depending on the brick. Like, how the living hell was Gregory able to drive that truck, or even know how to drive it? And how did Freddy allow that? Or like all his safety protocols off or something? Like, what the absolute living hell do we think is going on here? Because I have no clue. Gregory driving a car is 9 out of 10 on the weird scale, and honestly, in my opinion, King 100% certified weird. Like, who the thought that this made sense, and then didn't explain to us how he's driving the van? God damn it. And finally, in a number 1, knowledge. You know what I value more than the cars in my garage? Knowledge. Finally, the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. This kid is the size of a 4-year-old, can fit inside Freddy, baby strollers, and various other small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to go driving in one of the go-karts alone, but he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a car, as well as identify a car battery, connect the jumper cables on a car battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharge every hour issue. How the living hell does that make any sense? And how do they solve that issue in the true ending? Because Freddy is still going to need to recharge every hour, and they don't have a van this time around. So how do Freddy and Gregory make it to the hill without Freddy needing to recharge? Or how do they solve that issue? This kid knows more words than I do, but somehow is still the size of a 4-year-old. Maybe even smaller. No, it makes absolutely no sense. And this kid's weird superpower is what makes this game so confusing. It really only makes sense if he's a robot that was supposed to mimic a toddler who's been operational for decades and has been learning this whole time. That's the only way that this makes any sense to me. And at 8, spring-locked suits. The spring-locked suits in general are also something that William and even Henry both got extremely lucky with. Like, while Henry may not have designed the spring-locked suits, he certainly let Afton create them and then allowed for their use in the restaurants despite them being incredibly dangerous to employees, only putting them out of commission when someone eventually got hurt and not actually being proactive because, you know, they are literal death machines. You make separate animatronics and then you have separate costumes, okay? That's the right move, that's the smart move, that's the safe move. But these so-called businessmen thought, yeah, I'll put the safety of my employees at risk by making them wear a hot as balls suit filled with robot parts that even with the slightest bit of moisture will shoot those robotic parts right back to where your bones are. What can possibly go wrong? Like, you think that Willy Wonka has OSHA violations? Imagine FNAF's OSHA violations. Oh wait, actually, you don't have to, because we already did a whole list on that. Be sure you go check it out. But seriously, the fact that nobody sued them because they were being put in these things instead of, like, you know, much safer and cheaper options of, you know, a fabric suit is insane. And at 7, memory loss? For a kid who was more than willing to climb inside Freddy and also get decked out in Fazbear Entertainment merch, he sure seems to forget quite a bit about these animatronics. Gregory, while stumbling on his own name, may not show obvious signs of memory loss. When he gets trapped in a security office when Chica's outside the door, his only way out is to make a pizza using a robot. Now he asks Freddy why he needs to or even should do this, and Freddy's response is because Chica loves pizza. Of course Chica loves pizza! That's been her brand since the start, for like 40 years in this series. There have been memes about how much Chica loves pizza. They made a whole Mazer-size center because Chica loved pizza so much and they wanted to explain how she lost her weight. Gregory even catches her eating garbage and pizza, for God's sake. And he doesn't know that she loves pizza? How? How does he not know that when wearing both a Fazbear Entertainment shirt and shoes? Yeah, seems a little sus if you ask me. Gregory definitely should be venting. And at 6, leave it to fate. FNAF 6 was supposed to be the end of the Afton story. I was so looking forward to it. That's what Henry sets out to do in this game. Make sure that nobody remembered what happened there. However, this also figured that the first fire didn't work, so a second one surely will. And in fact, he was so confident in this plan for whatever goddamn reason that he actually let himself die in the process to leave nobody remembering what happened. But he didn't think that even if himself, William, and all their kids are dead, the parents of the victims still know. And as we learned from Security Breach in the duffel bags, there are other parents who remember it too. Like, it's a whole thing in the FNAF universe. They cite the missing children from the Pizzaplexes happening again. If Henry had stuck around to see if the job was really done, maybe William wouldn't have been able to possess Vanny and come back yet again and just kill more people. Henry should have lit the place up, smashed everything that survived, and then maybe you could have offed yourself. But at least make sure the job is done first. How about doing a number 5, Glitched Freddy? Alright, hear me out. It seems highly convenient that we just so happen to be at the show where Freddy glitches out, and that seemingly, as we're led to believe, this glitch is what causes him to refuse the Afton virus code thing. Like, what? How? we're supposed to believe that this glitch or this error is caused by Gregory, given the security threat message that pops up next to the silhouette of a child when we're actually like watching it from Freddy's perspective. But if that is true and we caused the glitch, how is a kid in a group full of kids a security threat when people are allowed to be in the Pizzaplex at this time? Like, sure, he didn't have a guest profile or whatever, but if Gregory was the glitch, wouldn't Freddy have glitched again after scanning us when we start the game? Honestly, I think that the hardest part to believe about this, strangely enough, is the fact that we were able to climb inside of Freddy while he was glitching out on stage without anyone noticing. Like, sure, maybe he wasn't on stage when we ended up climbing in, but a glitched animatronic is surely going to have some form of personnel around them so that they can get fixed up, especially when he is the headliner and it happened during a show. No way that he didn't go through parts and service before we actually end up meeting him in the first moments of the game. That's some strange, like, god level luck right there, okay? Is that really what happened? Jeez, that's some Talos level luck right there. Oh, praise mighty Talos. And it forsprung. So this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that made these suits, that handles the maintenance and has explained to every employee that has put on one of these things on like the proper procedure for the spring lock suits and making sure that it doesn't, you know, snap and then kill you, including the spring bodysuit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful. But somehow he's so smart that he didn't notice the leaking goddamn ceiling, which is already a health hazard, which you should have noticed beforehand. But then this also causes the spring locks that were active to snap shut, which would have killed him. However, this lucky mother hubber somehow managed to get possessed by someone who was so pissed at him that they kept him alive through all of his supposed to be deaths because they wanted William to suffer. Did they not realize how counterintuitive that is? The man literally wants to live forever and you are enabling him to do so. Old Man Consequences is right. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul so that Afton could finally die and then actually suffer in hell for all of eternity instead of a goddamn dream version that you made up when he was recharging underneath the Pizzaplex, or before he showed up in FNAF 6, or whenever you were goddamn torturing him with all this fake hell you made up. God damn it! Getting close to the end into number 3, potential robot. The possibility that Gregory is a robot is still a thing at the time of recording. So let's talk about the random bits that make Gregory seem more like an animatronic than a human. There's the fact that he's literally smaller than a 4-year-old, however is able to speak full sentences and do literally everything else he does in this game, which seems like he's a rogue robot that's been active for a long time. He can also get all CRT, glitchy-eyed whenever Vanny's around, similar to an effect where you'd hold up a magnet to like one of those old TVs. It's kind of like that. There's Freddy's shock as to how he sees Gregory after getting Roxy's eyes, and there's also the fact that literally nothing else makes sense about him unless he is a robot. It explains why he's homeless, it explains why he's willing to kill, because you know, no moral code, why Vanny would be willing to bring him to William if he's supposed to be Crying Child but as a robot. It explains why Afton takes over Freddy and not Gregory if he's still meant to be Crying Child, and basically makes this whole game make a lot more sense. So, is he a robot? Currently unknown, but it is certainly a possibility. But ultimately, into number 2, baby. This guy is actually the luckiest motherfucker alive. This girl was killed by a robot her father made that was specifically designed to kill. She was then locked away in an underground storage unit where she was regularly shocked and tortured by scientists, technicians that William probably hired so that they could try and find out the answers to why she's possessed. She goes through all of this, is locked underground for like 45 years at least, and then goes on to try to make her father proud in FNAF 6. She literally says, quote, "I will make proud, daddy," while her father is literally in the building with her. Girl, this man is the reason you are dead. Literally, there is no debate about it here. This is 100% William's fault. And the fact that he didn't put a blacklist of people not to kill only makes this more on him. But you still want to make him proud? And finally, and at number 1, the Palladium rule. I will stand by this until the day I die. And you know what? I used to call it the Platinum rule, but now it's the Palladium rule because it's a meme and I love it. The most ridiculous but luckiest thing that has ever happened in FNAF was the fact that William Afton killed people in his own place of business and then and didn't get caught. I don't know if this was always his intention, but like, who the absolute living hell would think that this is a good idea? Seriously, even if it's a TV show, okay, How I Met Your Mother does have some good lessons. One of those is Barney's platinum rule, which is if you have to see the person every day because you work with them or they live in an apartment next door to you, okay, don't engage in some form of relationship, okay? Because come a breakup, which is statistically probable, it just results in awkwardness and pain. And while this isn't the exact same thing, you are at this building all the time. Your name is a part of the company, so why would you think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else, okay? You ended up even getting banned while there was an investigation underway. I don't get it. And 10 closed doors. Okay, so the reason we get stuck in the Pizzaplex in the first place in this game is because we don't make it to the doors before midnight and then they close on us. Somehow being unable to open again, despite that being a horrible safety hazard. But that's still awfully convenient for not only the game, but for Vanny and William Afton in general, right? I mean, it's not lucky for us, but this is about the game's luckiest moments. So how did that happen? Well, before the doors close, Freddy sends us to get a pass in order to free him from his green room, and then everything seems to go well for that part. But then, for some reason, without ever mentioning it before, Freddy tells us that he senses that we're broken and that he needs to bring us to medical so that we can get fixed up. Even though we are literally inside of him at the start of the game, and when he pulls us out, he scans us, but this is suddenly a new problem. Well, we then get a run-in with Vanessa, and then Freddy fends her off, but other than that, we stay the same. We don't get healed, we don't get a band-aid, we get in the booth, instantly turn around and then start watching the scene in front of us. Almost as if it was just to like build our trust with Freddy. After that, Freddy doesn't ever mention how we're broken or injured again. Especially since after that little stop, even if you go full steam ahead the fastest you can go sprinting the entire time, you can't make it out the front doors. In 9, you're supposed to be on lockdown. Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown is the first line that we hear Vanessa say in this game, and it's also the start of the meeting that I just talked about. The one that we really shouldn't have had because we weren't injured? Yeah, well, interestingly, this conversation actually also describes how lucky we are. Firstly, if Freddy is supposed to be on lockdown, why is it just Freddy who is? Like, why? Is it because he glitched out? And if that is the case, wouldn't you be glad that he's working again? You know, for the company's sake? And secondly, it's incredible that Vanessa sees Freddy, tells him that he's supposed to be on lockdown, and then doesn't escort him back, allowing him to just roam free afterwards. And then she doesn't even continue to go the way she was walking. After scolding Freddy, she turns around and walks back the way she came while she was searching for us, facing even more towards us while we're in the booth, and doesn't notice the feet under the curtain or the kid watching from between the curtains. Weird, right? Especially when she's supposed to be looking for us. I don't know, it just seems off to me, okay? It's like a whole load of this game does. Oh, by the way, if you're liking this video and want to see more weird moments from Security Breach that shouldn't have happened, hit like and subscribe and let me know in the comments. In at 8, Pizza Maker. When we end up getting trapped by Chica, if you don't try to escape through all chips and you try to go the other way, we end up getting stuck in a security office with only one working door, which Chica is guarding. However, we also just so happen to have access to a monitor connected to the online Freddy Fazbear Pizza Maker, an online service where we remotely control a robot to make a pizza that just so happens to lure Chica away from us. That's way too convenient in my eyes. There is no way that we just so happen to run into this office, the one that has access to this despite Freddy being disconnected for the main server for whatever reason. This computer is connected to it. I mean, I don't know how this is possible. This is way too lucky for this to just be luck. Oh well, okay? I mean, maybe it's not so lucky. The first time I tried this minigame, I got stuck in the tomato sauce machine, and I made some very disturbing step animatronic jokes towards Chica because of it. Actually, no, that was pretty funny. In at 7, calling the cops. Let's look at this logically, alright? Henry knew what was going on with Afton, and that Afton had some shady scenarios cooking in his brain. So if he knew that this man was up to no good, and he was fearing for his daughter's safety, why didn't he make the call to the police and be like, hey man, so this William Afton guy is like thinking about killing kids, and probably is the one that's been killing the kids that you're looking for. Like, I mean, sure, maybe you didn't have proof, but you could have certainly tipped them off, and then they could have, you know, found the proof. Come on, they could at least keep a closer eye on him, but you didn't. And instead, you did a whole load of other that in reality didn't do anything to stop William. I mean, you did one thing that put him out of commission for like 30 years, but again, that was only 30 years. You could have stopped him. You could have actually stopped him in his tracks, but instead you chose to keep your mouth shut. That is Afton's plot armor working overtime with no extra pay. And it's 6 security access. Gregory throughout his time in this game steals so many things from the Pizzaplex, not even including all the little like gift boxes you can find around the place. He also steals security badges and ends up getting enough to have level 7 clearance. It's like a 4-year-old or however old he is, okay? Doesn't matter in this case. It's really unclear how old he is or how tall he is because he can't ride the go-kart alone, but he can fit in Freddy's cake cavity, but he can also speak full sentences with proper grammar and knows more words than I do. Like, again, no idea how old he is, but no matter what, how is he able to gain level 7 clearance? How are these so readily available for him to steal? And how is it that taking these badges always triggers some form of event that makes everything worse? How are the security guards supposed to use these badges if this is what happens every time they take it? Or you know what, an even better question, how are these security badges just laying around in like really special containers when the security should just have them on their belt with their normal clearance level, okay? Because getting multiple level 1 passes doesn't end up adding up to a maximum of level 8 clearance. That's still level 1. It's just a lot of level 1. Okay, I don't get it. It makes no sense. It's stupid. Halfway through into number 5, extreme measures. Speaking of which, Gregory being willing to kill Vanny at the end of the phaser blast brew is pretty messed up. Especially if this kid is meant to be like 10 or 11, which is what everyone seems to believe. This kid is easily able to destroy all 3 animatronics without a moment's hesitation and then use their upgrades on Freddy. He is willing to kill Vanny, like I said, despite actually seemingly knowing her, like we see in the best ending, and he burns Springtrap multiple times in an attempt to stop him from taking control over Freddy. So, what the absolute living hell is this kid doing, and how is he so nonchalant about this whole thing? This guy kills Vanny and then only gets emotional when he has to go and talk to a destroyed Freddy. Like, dude, Vanny is literally bleeding out mere feet from you. Couldn't you have just said like, stop Vanny or restrain Vanny, not freaking disassemble Vanny? I get that she said that about Freddy and it's fresh on your mind, but dude, you're not panicking about literally anything else. So just say something that doesn't involve a human dying, for God's sakes. Especially if you know her. In it for Phaser Blaster. Okay, is it just me, or is a place like the Pizzaplex giving away a golden version of their laser gun totally far-fetched? Because that's the story that we're supposed to be believing when we get the blaster after winning. That winning this game was essential because it was the only way to obtain the prize of the Phaser Blaster. That you can then run around and shoot people with. And when you do shoot those people, they will have a reaction no matter where you shoot them, as seen in the What If You Shoot Vanessa video here on YouTube. Which essentially means that this thing is a laser beam taser, okay? And I don't think that I should have to explain why that's a bad idea. So, why is not only this place giving away a laser taser, but also one that when shot disables your main feature animatronics? That seems like just literally the worst idea that you could think of. Almost as if they've never learned. Getting close to the end in number 3, first victim. They say that a killer's first victim is the most important, since it might indicate what really got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they can use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time. And while we may have talked about how Henry dropped the ball before, this was the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst of ways. Cause like he started killing off kids and then he sticks with that MO throughout the rest of the criminal career. Then like he also loses his kids after that. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't really suspect him of anything, even though her father did, is something that I fear. And finally, in at number 1, canon ending. During the true ending, or the Afton, burn trap ending, whatever the hell you want to call it, everything we experience is so freaking insanely lucky. Like, beyond even protagonist standards of luck. We have to fend off Burntrap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire using what are most likely the systems that Henry used to set the same building on fire in FNAF 6. I mean, it's incredibly thoughtful of the ground to only give out at the perfect moments that we fall into the room that we need to, with very easy to understand monitors set up connected to cameras in the various rooms that Burntrap enters, and only those rooms, with buttons that light fires in the rooms that correspond to what the monitor sees. Plus, I mean, like, you really gotta think about it. How are these still working? It's clearly been a while. These cameras and old computers are still working for an unknown amount of years after being set on fire that was enough to ruin the building. Not to mention, after falling into a sinkhole that had to open up beneath it. How is this all still working after that? And not only after that, but all of these computer monitors are literal dinosaurs. Like, if you go into an abandoned school library, this is what you will see. How did they work before the fire, let alone after? Okay, my parents have a monitor like this and it doesn't work. And I'm certain we took better care of it than a decrepit pizza brand that's been set on fire multiple times. So I don't know how this happened.